since I've gotten to say this, so I'm kind of excited. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet the newest member of the Drive Home Review family, Sharon Hagen. Name courtesy of Rebecca. You'll pardon me a moment of ego here. First time playing the claw machine back. First quarter in, first grab, boom, boom, boom. Who's the claw master, baby? That would be me. Yeah, this is also my first time back at what I would consider kind of one of my favorite little theaters. I've been to my other two since things have kind of gotten a little bit less hectic, but now we're getting more hectic again. Anyway, so it was really great to be back, and what a film to start back on, and what a quiet little film that I'm sure nobody has really heard of or has really experienced, and I think that's a real shame, because I think this is one of the best films I've seen in quite some time. And admittingly, it's a film that is just hitting all the right buttons for me. It's one of those films that you feel like it's made for my sensibilities and my personal likes and dislikes. So I really dug the hell out of it, and I'm going to try to explain to you why. So if you haven't heard of this movie, and I'm not surprised if you haven't, Sharon Hagen, hence Sharon Hagen, and James McElroy are a couple who are just at each other's throats. They're at the end of their relationship. They hate each other with a, fairly, it's a hatred that is so intense. You're kind of surprised it hasn't turned violent, which I guess in a way it has. We'll talk about that in a second. But at least not striking fist fight violence. But if someone told you these two were beating the shit out of each other every day, you'd believe it, because they're just so antagonistic to each other. I've been rewatching the great 90s cartoon show Duckman, and it's very much a Duckman Bernice situation for those for the 5 people watching who get that reference. That they are just at each other's fucking throats, but they are bound together, one, by the fact that they have a child together, and that's why they stay together for too long, and secondly, because the lockdown happens. So this is the first film that I know of, the first real piece of media about the lockdown, or that takes place during the lockdown. I knew they were going to come. I knew there were going to be tons of movies about this, because it's such an important point in history and such a unique point in history. I didn't think it would come quite this quickly, or in this format. This is such an interesting format. So these two people are trapped together, and over the course of over a year, they start to reestablish their relationship. Their relationship changes as the varying months pass by. So fairly simplistic plot, right? And you could see this being the plot of any number of romantic comedies, or independent movies, or things like that. You can see a plot like this happening. Ironically, you would think that it would go the opposite direction, because one thing that I read, and who knows how much of this is true, they say that breakups and divorces skyrocketed during the quarantine, because people were trapped together for so long that they just suddenly realized how much they got on each other's nerves. This goes the opposite way and goes, these two people are already at each other's throats, and now they're going to get it's going to get worse, and now it's going to get better as the world kind of gets worse. It's an interesting shift up. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So what makes this movie kind of unique is the way in which the information is presented. So one of the things I really love about this movie is that it is very theatrical. This film is written, acted, and shot like it's a play. And I don't believe it was a play, and if it's not, then I must speak directly to the screenwriter right now, because I know you're watching. Please make it a play. I want to direct this. Please make it a play. But it is very theatrical in its staging and its presentation. For instance, the way information is presented is our two main characters talk directly to the audience. They break that fourth wall, and they're telling the story of them getting together and all this as if we're in the room with them. It's a really odd conceit. I'm not talking about, you know, The Office or Modern Family or things like that, where you have a scene and then you cut to an interview and, you know, the person says what they're really thinking. No, it's as if the camera is the audience and they're speaking directly to us. Like almost all of it. There's not a scene they have where they're not cognizant of the fact that they're talking to the audience. Even when they have surprisingly intimate scenes, they are aware that we are there and part of the conversation. And that is such a off-Broadway playwriting thing to do. And I love it. The acting is also very theatrical and very off-Broadway theatrical. What I mean by that is, you know, this is one of those small plays. I'm going to refer to it as a play, even though it's not. This is one of those things that would be a small play that would be done in like a black box, maybe even in the Round. Oh, God, that would be so cool. Oh, I want to stage this in the Round now. Come on, please put this out. Anyway, so the acting is very naturalistic. It's not movie acting. Movie acting is still a bit bombastic. It's a little bit larger than life. This feels like you are in the house with them, and they feel like real people talking. And big ups to that has to go to the dialogue, the actual script, which is phenomenal. But man, I got to give hats off to Sharon Hagen and James McElroy. I have got to give big hats off, and I have to be especially apologetic to James McElroy, who for many reviews, some of you may know, I've always referred to as James McAvery. I've mispronounced his name because I'm dumb. And a day ago or so, when I was telling Rebecca I was going to go see this, she corrected me. She said it's James McElroy. And me being a smart ass, you know, not wanting to admit, because I'm a man, not wanting to admit that I was wrong, said, it's like, yeah, I know, but I'm not going to if he doesn't want me to mispronounce his name, then he needs to act better. Because I have not been a fan of many of his films outside of Arthur Christmas and the first X-Men First Class. Everything else he's been in that I've seen, it's been shit. And his acting has been subpar at best. And don't even try bringing up that Split shit with me. That is not good acting. I don't care what anybody says. So, you know, I made the bad joke of if he wants me to pronounce his name correctly, he needs to act better. Well, sir, I have always made it a point of personal pride to admit when I'm wrong. And I was so wrong. This was a masterful performance. Again, both of them did a phenomenal job. It felt like real dialogue. And I'm thinking, as a playwright, you know, I'm thinking of, you know, how you'd write some of this dialogue. And do you write in every intervention, or do you write in, you know, every or ooze? How much of it is the script? How much of it is the actor? And I don't know what the formula was, but it was working. And James McElroy, I'm paying special attention to him because I've bad-mouthed him so much in the past and bad-mouthed so many of his performances that I feel I owe it to him to be repentant and say, no, this is a brilliant performance. He has several monologues where it's just him talking to the camera. And to the director's credit, so much of this film is just one shot. There are very few cuts in there. We get more cuts kind of as the film goes on, as we get further in time. But a lot of it, especially when the characters have monologues, it's just one steady shot. And there are a lot of monologues in this. And it's a privilege to watch these two actors work. It truly is. Like, it's a masterclass in acting. You know, I hope I can get a copy of this soon. I want to show my acting class this movie and some of these monologues, because it is just, it's masterful. I can't think of another word to say to describe it. It's fucking amazing. And the chemistry the two of them have together is just, it's just perfect. Like, they balance each other. It's great timing. You have to find the right people for a film like this or a play like this. You have to find the right people who have the right chemistry and can balance each other. And boy, do they do it. And they're the only people in this. It's just them. It reminds me an awful lot of Destination Wedding, another film I reviewed some years ago with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, where they are the only two people literally in the movie. There's their son who's in there, but he does not talk for 90% of it. He's just there kind of reacting to them fighting. And he's kind of a spooky kid, too, so that's fun. So, yeah. I also like little touches, like little things I noticed, the poetry of the playwriting. Here's a good example. So, one of the things I noticed about lockdown, you know, is that when the lockdown began, right, there were all of these things online, you know, all these things people were doing to help get through it. Patrick Stewart was reading a Shakespeare sonnet a day. I had friends, one friend was reading one chapter of Anne of Green Gables. Another friend was reading a poem a day. You know, people were playing guitars and writing songs and doing all this stuff, you know, during the first couple months. And then the thing I noticed as the lockdown kind of dragged on and more bad shit kept happening, that steadily disappeared to be replaced by a lot of, you know, not unwarranted, but a lot of whining. Like, everybody was just getting madder and madder, and things were getting ugly and uglier. And when we really needed some of these lighter things, they were few and far between. I'm not trying to make myself sound like, you know, some kind of, you know, brilliant savior of the masses, but I was really trying with Forgotten Gems to make sure, okay, let's keep this up. Let's keep putting positive things out there. You know, I had somebody criticize how many of those I was putting out at one time, but it was like, well, one, I'm bored, and two, it's like I'm trying to stay positive. I'm trying to not get sucked into this, and I kind of wish more people kind of followed that lead. But anyway, I'm not trying to make myself sound great here. I did a low-viewed review show. No one cares. The point I'm making, why I'm bringing this up, is because what I loved is, like, in the very first scene, these two people, when they are at their most antagonistic and their most toxic, are the one thing they agree on is that, you know, they hate all these happy people doing, oh, look at me, I'm playing guitar. Oh, look at me, I'm doing this. Oh, look at me, I'm doing that. And they're mocking it, and they're doing this very very like, dismissive kind of way. And then towards the end of the film, when these two people have gone through a very traumatic experience and they are now closer together emotionally, they make reference to how the world is farther apart and everybody's so mad. You know, so there's a poetry in the way the world is responding versus the way they are responding. And there's a lot of little things like that in there. Like, even at their most angry, they have scenes in there where the two of them agree and are enjoying telling these stories together. So you see that they're not a lost cause of a couple. This is a film that totally rewrites Aristotle's 6 Elements of Theater. For those who aren't familiar, brief theatrical lesson. So the Greek philosopher Aristotle, one of the first theatrical critics, in his work, The Poetics, came up with a list of the 6 elements that need to be included in every single piece of drama, according to him, and the order that they should go in. And they are, let's see if I can do it without messing up, plot, character, theme, language, music, spectacle. And they need to be in that order. So to him, plot, story is more important than character or theme or language. This is a film where I think if they were doing it, character would come first, language second, theme third, and plot maybe after music, really, because there really isn't a plot. There is no real connecting thread here. It's just them dealing with the situation. I feel like, as much as I love this movie, I feel like what may turn a lot of audiences off to it is that this is all still so raw. You know, this is all still so personal. Like, we're not even a year really removed from any of it. And I think for a lot of people, watching this may be very, very difficult. One of the major plot points in here is the death of Sharon I'm just going to call her Sharon's mother. That's another thing. I'll come back to that. And she's describing it, and I remember, I'm not going to go into details, but my family went through something very similar during the lockdown, and as she's describing it, even though it's not exactly our story, it was still very visceral. Like, I could remember very clearly a lot of the stuff she was describing, even if it didn't happen exactly the way she was describing it. And it made it very difficult to kind of get through. And so I imagine a lot of folks are going to have that kind of problem with this film, is that it's still so raw. Anyway, before I get to the negatives here, that's another thing that's very theatrical about this, is that these characters don't have names. The only character who has a name is their son, and the joke being that they're arguing about his name. She wants to call him Arnold, and he wants to call him Archie. You know, but neither one of them have names. Anyway, if there is negative in this film, I think there's 2 things, aside from the very visceral, raw emotion of it. I think, number one, since there is no plot, or there's a very thin plot, I feel a lot of scenes just kind of meander for a while. They go on a little too long, and I notice that about a lot of the scenes. You have to be very careful in a film when you're doing something like this, because the audience can tune out to it. And I think there's a couple scenes where I'm in danger of doing that. The acting and the dialogue kept me in it, but there were times I was like, okay, we could have cut that scene by about 5 minutes, maybe. So there's that. The other thing is that, again, the dialogue is so good, the acting is so good, that you kind of forget sometimes that these are actually 2 very toxic people. And, like, at first the toxicity levels are high, but they're, I'm going to say, theatrically high. They're comically high. We understand that we're looking at people, you know, when you see one of these plays, you understand that the characters, even though they're acting naturally, are dialed up a bit. They're a bit more extreme than they otherwise would be. So you accept that fact. But the problem is that as the film goes on, and as these 2 are starting to reconnect emotionally, you are constantly kind of reminded every so often that, you know, these 2 are not good people, and not good people for each other. They are toxic to each other. One of the big plot points in here is about the 2 of them plotting to poison each other with mushrooms, and one of them actually going through with it. And it's like, that's not that's not funny or cute when you really think about it. That is toxic is the only word I can use. So again, luckily the quality of the writing and the quality of the acting keeps you engaged, kept me engaged with the characters, but I can totally see how other people would be turned off by this, by just how toxic and how ugly these two people actually are to each other. You know? So I totally get that. Like, if someone went and saw this movie and said, I hated it because these people are just the worst human beings and they're so terrible to each other, I could not disagree with you. Now, again, for me, the writing, the acting, the staging of it saves it for me, but if someone else, that wasn't enough, I can't say I disagree, and I can't say that I would be surprised. So I think that's one of the few flaws in the film, is that I think you can have people who are angry at each other, you can have people who are even, I'm going to say theatrically rotten to each other, but there is a line in the sand where things go from being simply theatrical to being reprehensible. That being said, I think James McAvoy has an excellent character arc in several of his monologues here, from the one in the beginning and the one he gives towards the end. Beautiful character arc. Really loved it. Okay, so let's wrap this up. So final grade for Together. I'm going a solid A+. I really liked this. And again, it clicks all the boxes for me. It's very theatrical. There's big, the emphasis is on the acting and the writing. And both of those things are done to perfection. So for me, a theater guy, this is my bread and butter. I love stuff like this. And again, I want this to be a play. Please make this a play so I can direct it. Please. So yeah, I really loved it. I think people should see this, but I can understand if this might be a film that it may take, 5-6 years for it to really catch on. And I hope it does. I hope maybe when we're not quite as in the middle of it as we are now, that maybe people will rediscover this movie and really see it for how good it is, because it's damn good. So I highly recommend it. Try to find it. I don't think you'll be sorry. All right, so that felt really good. That was a good film to kind of see after a couple of disappointments here and there. So yeah. So check this one out. All right, so that's all for me today. Thank you very much for joining me, and as always, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.